Be committed to excellence, and you'll never have to worry about having a job in your life. You know, among my favorite subjects in life is the subject of my dad. I love talking about him, telling stories about him. I lost him back in 2020, in December of 2020. Uh, he passed away suddenly, and that's the way he wanted to go. He had a stroke and was gone in literally no time. But he always wanted that. He didn't want to get sick in his older life and be a burden to the family, especially to my mother. So he wanted to just go on out, and that's the way he went. And my dad kind of always did things his way, and that was the way he lived his life. And what I want to do is share some valuable life lessons with you that I learned from my dad that keep me going. You know, I still miss him greatly. I learned so many things from him, especially I think to work with my hands, to do the little projects I do, working with tools, building things, making furniture, repairing things. Everything I know about working with my hands as far as using tools, I learned from him. And he was always committed to not cutting corners and doing it the best you can do it, no matter why you were doing it, do it your best. And to this day, even though he's been gone 3.5 years, I still grab my phone, and when I'm working on a project around the house here and I'm kind of confused as to what I should do, I still pick up the phone ever so often and think that I can call him and get him to tell me how to do it. And then I realize that he's no longer with us. But I've had that happen to me at least 20 times since he passed away. But I just want to share with you some pretty valuable life tips that I took from him that may be beneficial to you. And the first and most valuable, or at least among the most valuable tips I got from my dad, was to start your day early. Don't hit the snooze button because on your alarm clock. My dad never had an alarm clock. He automatically woke up every day at the same time. It was the most amazing thing. He didn't need to set a clock, and he would get up as soon as he would wake up. He wouldn't lay there and hug his pillow like so many people do. He wouldn't go, "Oh God, I can't believe it's morning." I mean, as soon as his eyes would open, he would stand up and start his day. He'd go get his coffee, he'd go get dressed, uh, whatever morning things he needed to do to get out the door. And within a half hour, he would be out the door. And he always told me, he said, when you wake up, get up. He said, because if you just keep laying there, you're gonna regret it. You're not gonna feel like getting up. He said, so just get up and get started. And you'll be surprised at how much energy that you'll have and how much better you'll be during the day, how faster you will wake up. And he said, so just get up and get started early. And well, that's never really been an issue for me because I've always been an early riser. I've always woken up somewhere between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock most of my life. I've never been one to lay there and keep punching the clock and saying, oh God, oh, it's so terrible to have to get up so early. I hate this. But I do remember, maybe it's in my genes to have picked that up from him, but he would get up, get ready, and get out the door and go do whatever work he had to do. And he always, for the most part, at least the first 30 plus years of my life, he always worked for himself. So if he could get on the job early, he would. And so getting up as soon as you wake up is a good thing to do. Too many of us lay around and wish that we could sleep in, all of that. But if you would truly just get up, as soon as your eyes open, just get up, go straight to the restroom, splash some water on your face. You'll be surprised at how fast you are ready to get started and how much energy you have that part of the day. The second thing that I learned from my dad was being committed to excellence, especially in your work. He always said, if you are committed to excellence, you will never have a problem getting a job or finding someone to hire you. And that is so true. My dad was never without work, never. There was never a time in his 83 years that he didn't have work. Now, he retired when he was 72, but before that, I never, ever, ever saw him without a job to do, without work to do. And he said that was because people will pay you if you're the best, if you commit yourself to being the best. You don't have to worry about it. There's no competition for those of us that are dedicated to excellence. The only time I saw him not work was a time when he got severely injured on one of the jobs that he was doing. He literally fell off of a 2-story building and he fell on a pile of bricks head first. He had gone to work with the flu. That's how dedicated to working and taking care of his family that he was. He literally passed down and fell off head first on a pile of bricks. I mean, he had a big gash in his head. He totally dislocated this shoulder, the arm from this shoulder socket, to where they had to surgically replace it. And for 2 weeks, and the doctors wanted him to take a full month off for him to recover. And we're talking back in the 1970s when the surgical techniques that are available today weren't available then. And he literally just destroyed this entire part of his shoulder, and his arm was totally disconnected from it. And they had to, the only thing holding it on was his flesh, I should say. And they had to basically reconstruct all that. And he wasn't able to move it. They had him strapped this way for 2 weeks. And my mother had to run out and find a job at a barbecue house, a restaurant, I believe, is what it was, just to make ends meet. But they told him he was a roofer at that time in his life. That's why he was on a 2-story building. They told him, you won't be able to use this arm to do that ever again. You're going to have to find something else to do. And the most amazing thing, after 2 weeks, he still had his arm in a sling. He went back to work and he just nailed on shingles left-handed. And he almost was as fast left-handed as he was with his right hand. And eventually he got to where he could just use his right hand this way, this with his wrist. And gradually he just got back out there, and before you knew it, within a month or so, he was back to making the same amount of money and working just as much. He hated those 2 weeks that he couldn't work. And he went back out even though it was against doctor's best advice. But he wanted to take care of his family, and he wanted to be committed to doing the job that he told the people that he was going to do, committed to excellence. He always said, if you're not lazy and if you're dedicated to excellence, you do your best, you will never, ever have a problem getting work. And that was true of him. He never a day that he didn't have work to do, except for that time when he injured himself quite severely. Third life lesson that I take from my dad is to always be willing to help people who are really in need. Now, this is something that many of us already know, but many of us are not willing to help others. My dad never said no to anyone. If they had a real need, he would oftentimes take money that he didn't have. He would give them something that he really couldn't afford to give them. He just viewed it as a responsibility of humanity, a biblical lesson. Jesus said, give and it will be given to you. Even people he oftentimes didn't even really like that much. If they needed something, if they needed help, especially if it had to do with providing for their family or whatever, he would give it. He would do it without any questions. Now, obviously, he didn't always have that much to give, but he would give whatever he could. And that's a life lesson. It's a that all of us really should live by. That there is great joy that comes from knowing that you're helping someone who truly has a need. And my dad was always willing to do that. He touched a lot of people's lives. And when he passed away, I got inundated with text messages and emails and phone calls from people who said, your dad was among the best people I've ever known. I can't tell you how many times he helped me. Or I remember a time when I was down on my luck and he helped me get through it. And I don't know what I would have done if it wasn't for your dad. And these were unsolicited. These were people just sending me this information because they wanted to reach out to me, my brother, sister, my mom, and just tell us what a difference he had made in their lives. So he was always willing to help people if they had a need. And then the last thing I want to tell you, even though I could go on and on and on, the last thing I want to say is a life lesson was just be dedicated to your family. You know, my dad and mom were together 66 years and they had some rough times. I saw them have some pretty serious disagreements over the years, but they stuck it out. They stayed together. From their generation, staying together is what you did. And they loved each other passionately, and they loved their kids, me, my brother, and my sister. And my dad was always dedicated to us. There was never a time that he wasn't available to me. Never a time that I didn't know that the reason he got up early and got out the door, that he was going to make sure that I had a place to live, something to eat. And we weren't wealthy by any stretch, not by any stretch. I can remember a time my mother stood in front of the dinner table and had me, my brother, and sister sitting there. My dad was still out working. He would work 12, 14 hours a day, especially in the summers. And she held up a $5 bill and she said, "This is all the money that we have for this entire week, and I'm going to feed you on it. So don't ask for anything." And so we didn't. And we ate that. And it's back in the late 60s, early 70s. And we ate good that week. We didn't ever have much. I didn't always have lots of toys and lots of shoes and lots of clothes, but I had what I needed. And I knew that my dad had provided everything I needed and more because he was dedicated. You know, when you're injured to the degree that he was, and you'll go out and work because your family is depending on you, that gets into you. That's the reason to this day I am, if I can brag on myself a little bit, I am not lazy. I work every single day. I'm not afraid to put my hands to the plow and get out there and do whatever I need to do. And I've been a college professor. I've worked in a cushy office, and I've worked in the floor cleaning business. I own a cleaning business now, and I'm not above getting up every single day and getting out there and working as long as I can to get the job done. And that's an instinctive and a value that my dad instilled in me and my brother and my sister. I can honestly say that my brother and sister and I, because of my dad, are pretty hard-working people. Don't expect anything from anybody else. Expect to provide for ourselves with our own efforts because of the efforts we saw in our dad. So these are 4 really intense life lessons that I think about when I think about my dad, even though there are countless others. They mean a lot to me, and hopefully they mean a lot to you now. Live by these principles and your life will be better. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it.